When most people think of ancient Egypt, they picture pyramids, right? The Sphinx, the Pharaohs. But here's a question most people never ask. Like, who's living in Egypt before the Pharaohs? Like, because long before the first pyramid was built, long before the first dynasty, there were already people living along the Nile. Man, they were farming, trading, building villages, and laying the foundation for one of the greatest civilizations in human history. I mean, look, today we're going to explore the civilization that existed before the Pharaohs, right? Let's go back more than 6,000 years before there was an Egypt. There were many small communities spread across the Nile Valley. The Nile wasn't just a river. It was life itself, right? Every year it flooded the surrounding land, leaving behind rich soil, perfect for farming. I don't care if y'all think that I'm just like, hey, look, as these communities grew, people began raising crops, herding animals, and creating permanent settlements. Over time, they became more organized, right? So look, one of the most important prehistoric cultures was the Naqada culture, right? Named after the modern Egyptian town where archaeologists first discovered many of its artifacts. Pay attention to what I'm saying. The Naqada culture existed roughly between 4000 BC and 3000 BC. That's centuries before the Great Pyramid of Giza. Archaeologists divide this period into 3 stages. Now look, Naqada 1, Naqada 2, and Naqada 3. Right? That's 3 stages. With each stage, we see remarkable progress, right? Pottery became more sophisticated. Stone tools improved. Trade expanded. And artistic craftsmanship reached new levels. People weren't simply surviving. They were building a civilization. One of the biggest surprises is how connected they already were. Right? Archaeologists have discovered materials from distant regions, right? Including Nubia, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Near East. That tells us these early Egyptians were part of long-distance trade networks thousands of years before the pyramids. Then something extraordinary happened, right? Instead of remaining separate villages, many communities began joining together under powerful local rulers. Competition increased. Some settlements became stronger than others. Eventually, larger kingdoms emerged in Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. This period set the stage for one of the greatest transformations. Around 3100 BC, a ruler known as Narmer, often identified with the legendary king Menes, unified Upper and Lower Egypt into a single kingdom. Many historians consider this the beginning of Egypt's first dynasty. From that moment forward, the age of the pharaohs had begun. Y'all better pay attention to me now. Look at what I'm talking about. But here's what often gets overlooked. Pay attention to me what I'm saying. The pharaohs didn't create Egypt's civilization from nothing. Listen to me. They inherited thousands of years of knowledge, agriculture, trade, art, right? Religion, right? Listen to me. Architecture, government. Look, these ideas have been developing long before the first king wore the double crown of Egypt, right? Listen to me. Another fascinating discovery comes from ancient cemeteries. Archaeologists have found elaborate burials dating to the Predynastic period. Some of individuals were buried with jewelry, like decorated pottery, stone tools, cosmetics, and ceremony objects. Of course, they was going to find that. But look, this tells us social classes were already forming before the pharaohs ruled. Religion was involved, and look, leadership was emerging. And look, and society was becoming increasingly complex. Look, today researchers continue uncovering evidence that pushes our understanding of early Egypt even further back. But look, each new excavation reminds us that civilization doesn't appear overnight. It grows generation after generation. Knowledge is passed from parents to children. Like we all know, communities become villages, villages become cities, right? And eventually empires are born. But look, sometimes we focus so much on the pyramids that we forget about the thousands of years that made them possible. Come on, slow down a little bit. Look, the ancient Egyptians didn't suddenly wake up one morning knowing how to build monuments that still amaze us today. Not at all. They learned, look, experimented, improved, and built upon achievements of those who came before them. What does that sound like? Right? Maybe that's the greatest lesson history teaches us. Every great civilization stands on the shoulders of early generations. The pharaohs became legendary. as they should, right? But before there were kings, there were farmers. Think about that. Craftsmen, traders, families, ordinary people whose ideas slowly transformed the Nile Valley into one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. And without them, there would have been no pyramids, no Sphinx, no ancient Egypt as we know it. Look, if you enjoy exploring ancient civilization through history, archaeology, and evidence, subscribe to the Conscious Signal, because sometimes the most important chapter of history is the one that came before the story everyone already knows. Until next time.